inside a gated community.
Okay.
Not only did they have speed bumps, but they set up full speed enforcement devices. If you were caught speeding, you would get an HOA speeding ticket. So
were these radar units mounted on tripods next to the road?
Oh, yes.
Gosh, I'm sorry, but those 4x4s I was hauling in my truck accidentally took out the tripod.
John, we're gonna hit a topic today.
Okay.
It's a polarizing one.
Okay.
I went down the rabbit hole. TikTok. I have TikTok to blame for this and Instagram to blame for this.
Okay.
But I went down the rabbit hole of crazy HOA stories. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Those are classic.
Those are classic because I saw one that just put me over the edge.
Okay.
As a real estate agent of being around this, and so I said, you know what? We've danced around HOA discussions and talked a little bit about HOAs over the year, but let's do a whole show on it. Let's make it a little bit of fun and talk about some of the crazy things that we come across. And but first, background. HOA, Homeowners Association.
Yes.
Not all properties are in HOAs.
No.
People have very distinct feelings, generally one way or the other, when they're shopping for a home.
Rumor has it that even before COVID, the term Karen was coined out of an HOA. Is that true?
I did not see that verified in my research, but it is totally possible because it is the subject. And especially, I got to tell you, I really think that the proliferation of Ring doorbells and video cameras that document this have just added to the heat of this debate because there are full-on TikTok accounts, Instagram accounts, YouTube accounts dedicated to HOA problems or sometimes to specific HOA presidents and not in a good way. Oh, dear. Okay, and so the story that made me do this, that made me come up with this as a topic to talk about today, is I was sent a news story earlier this week that said an HOA in California was forcing the residents to have to leave and have their garage doors open from 8 a.m. in the morning until 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
What?
Okay, yeah, right.
Hey. Back up that moving van. Okay, theft crew, get busy.
Yeah, like this, okay, this doesn't make, right, this doesn't make any sense, right? So my initial reaction, this is an AI-generated fake news story. So we start to dig into this a little bit.
Okay.
It actually was it was an older story that was true, but was making the rounds and made to look new. So this did happen. I found actually 2 different communities that this had happened in. One of those was in California. This did happen, and here's the reasoning why. But this is where I'm talking about things going off the rails.
Okay.
So what happened was they believed that they had a residence within the community where people were living in the garage.
Oh.
Like they were habitating in the garage, okay? And so they felt like, obviously, this violated the terms of the CC&Rs, that you could not use that space as habitable space. You could not be sleeping in there. But they couldn't figure out how to prove this because you're going to have to, I mean, what are you going to get? A search warrant to go into go into somebody's house to check the garage, or you're going to have to find proof to do it. Like, I understand what the original issue was. So at an HOA meeting, at a heated HOA meeting, they come up with this idea of, I know how we can solve this problem. We can make it a rule that you have to have your garage door open from 8 in the morning until 4. So then you can drive around the community and look in people's garages to see if people are living in there or not. Now,
I wonder if we have any attorneys listening.
well, okay, this doesn't make any sense to a normal person, correct? I mean,
no.
I mean, I can see by the shock on your face, McKay. It's the same shock that I had.
It's a security issue.
It's a huge security issue.
And a safety issue.
All of us store stuff in garages. You have tools in garages, lawnmowers in garages, other cars in the garage. So you're telling me that you're going to take away somebody's property rights and their enjoyment of their property because one unit in the development, they're having an issue. Can we not find another way to figure out the issue without affecting the whole community? So
apparently not.
So it was interesting. Within a couple days of this happening, it hit the news and blew up in the news. And so you've got investigative reporters out there. You've got neighbors rallied and mad about it. And they got it reversed. But they had notices. They had the written notices, and they were going to be fined like $200 for every instance that this wasn't happening. And what made me think of this also as an issue, and John, there was another recent movie that was on Netflix that I saw, and this family moves into a neighborhood, and the mom's backing out of the garage, and they're pulling into the street, and like you said, my wife's a Karen, so I think if anybody can say that, I can get away with it or get in trouble with it later. But it said she's backing into the street. A Karen from the neighborhood, the friendly neighborhood, runs up to the car door in this movie and knocks on the window and says, "I'm sorry, I noticed you were leaving, but you didn't close your garage." So the opposite of what we're talking about is portrayed in the movie that the HOA says if you're not outside or under house, like you can't leave your garage open. So there's other rules that are the opposite of that. And so like these are the things, like when this shows up in movies and stuff, you want to think like, okay, this is just like a cinematic portrayal. But I went through and I pulled out some stories that we can get reactions, your reaction today on, John, about some of these things that were in HOAs. The first one I'm going to come up with is not too far away from us, and this came from a real estate agent out of Tacoma, Washington.
Yeah.
And he recalls an HOA that he dealt with that had a rule that the grass could only be between 2 to 3 inches tall. Okay, so if you went even a half inch over, then the homeowners got fined. The kicker of this was they were worried about short grass using too much water, too much water consumption, the shorter grass. So you would also get fined if the grass was too short. So can you picture people in this development out there with their rulers trying to set their lawnmowers? And then what would happen like during the rainy season, because Tacoma has a rainy season.
Yeah.
And you can't get out to mow the... Anyway, absolute disaster.
You know, it's kind of interesting because I'm like, how would you'd have to get on their property to measure the lawn.
Okay.
So I'd be telling them, hit the bricks. You're on my yard.
Okay, so now you bring up a whole nother story. So Realtor.com actually did an article last month that said ridiculous things the HOA cannot do. Okay, and so John, you bring up a great point. I had it written down as my point number 4, and that was enter someone else's property without cause or notice.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right, because somebody this is an enforcement issue, and this is what really bugs people, and obviously you would fall into that category. I likely would as well, because I deal with real estate and property rights all the time. That's my job. So I get really passionate about access. Plus, I come from the agriculture farm community.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to give you a little warning. Try driving on a farmer's land, like more than 1 inch, and you usually figure out where they live or the type of weapon that they have. Not a great idea. So just warning out there, North Pasco, stay on the roads. But they're heavily into property rights. So I come to it from a property right family background. But you're right. If they haven't given notice or cause, like if they haven't given, say, like a 48 hours notice that they're going to come on your property or 24 hours and that would be, there's likely in the CC&Rs a mechanism for this or a rule that was voted on by the board. That would be for inspections or rule violations. So they're going to have to give notice. Then they're going to have to come on your property and do the inspection for the violation and then prove that it actually happened. So you're right. It doesn't create a very hospitable environment, we shall say. We shall see. And so, like, that was just one example that I came up with. Another one that we actually see as common is another one that I've seen is only white lights for the holiday decorations.
Oh.
Like they wanted the whole neighborhood white lights, like no colored bulbs, no, nothing outside of the white lights. And so that is like very, very restrictive. And I've also seen other developments where I've seen the CC&Rs that they didn't specify the color of the lights, but they said that the lights could not be up or turned on pre-Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And so so this is what you can get in an HOA environment. So you can imagine, I get a number of customers that come to us and they say, hey, we're looking for a house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever the specs are, and we cannot deal with an HOA. We can't be in an HOA. So that's very common that I will have a customer say that. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other hand, if you look at, if you are somebody that is very symmetrical and you like things very clean and always the same, there is the opposite side of this argument, that there are some great reasons to be in an HOA, but it is personality and very, very individualized. Like, for instance, it probably one of the tightest managed ones in the Tri-Cities is Creekstone. Mm-hmm. And so the nice part about it, though, if you're ever going down 10th and then you drive into Creekstone, here's the thing about Creekstone, though. The lawns always look beautiful in the parks. There's not a lot of garbage around there. The trees are always trimmed and maintained.
Yeah, they look nice.
All of the fences are the same color, and like you don't have a weather stained cedar fence, and then your neighbor has a nicely stained one, and then your other neighbor has a blue one. No, they're all. I don't know the Sherwin-Williams number, but I know there's a number. I've seen the letters in Creekstone. They're not all. Every single fence is SW 370 or whatever that gray color is. All the fences are. And if that fence, if it starts to get water damage or the paint is peeling, they have a mechanism where you're going to get a letter and you're going to need to repaint it. So, but if that is something that appeals to you, that might be a great option. You just have to know that you're going to be living within the confines of those rules. And then what can happen inside a gated community?
Okay.
Not only did they have speed bumps, but they set up full speed enforcement devices. Wow. They were on tripods. They would secretly locate the radar around the community. And then if you were caught speeding, you would get an HOA speeding ticket.
Well, I have a way of answering that, and anybody out there that is a World War II history buff, I remind you about Window. During World War II, when the British were night bombing Germany, to confuse the German radar, they had pathfinders. They were planes that were sent in. They dropped flares to illuminate the target.
Yep.
15 minutes later, here come the bombers. They would drop, the Pathfinders and the bombers would drop huge bales of shredded tinfoil
Yes.
before, and the tinfoil would scatter all over the horizon, and the Germans would get snow on their radar.
Okay.
And they called it window. So I'm thinking, here's what you do. You live in that HOA. You cover your car entirely in tinfoil.
Okay.
And then that way they can't get a reading.
That is the John McKay solution to the craziness. And if you had enough violations in this particular HOA, if you exceeded your allotment of violations, they would revoke your security gate access to the neighborhood. So you'd have to park outside of the neighborhood and walk to your house. So
Were these radar units mounted on tripods next to the road?
Oh, yes.
Gosh, I'm sorry, but those 4x4s I was hauling in my truck accidentally took out the tripod.
So yeah, there's a crazy one for you. So that one,
That's just how I roll.
That one was bizarre.
Yeah. Window.
So I
Look
had
it
not
up.
Heard that one again. Another one that we commonly see is, and I was recently down in Arizona, and if you go to some of the gated communities in Phoenix or Tucson area, you'll notice that a lot of the homes there do have like similar desert-based stucco colors.
Yes.
A lot of it's for a reason because of the heat, but a lot of that is consistent with HOA rules and bylaws to where you only have like 7 different shades of Adobe brown that you can paint your house.
But that's a little different, though. When you're talking Southwestern, that type, you don't want to be doing pink or purple or fuchsia, okay?
You might not want
That's not going to look good on Adobe. I'm sorry.
No, so you can see where this regionally neighborhood, and then you get down to individual rights, you can see where this subject gets very, very polarizing.
Yeah.
The other thing that we run into, another one that I saw that was crazy, was there was an HOA that restricted commercial trucks, restricted trucks from being parked in the driveway. What they're trying to prevent with this rules, they're trying to prevent people from running businesses out of their home. Like if we look at the root cause of it, right? Like originally this was to prevent people from running businesses out of their home, like having, 3 1-ton service trucks and they don't have a shop and they park them at home at night. Well, in this particular neighborhood, what does somebody do? Because it's very trendy right now. Somebody gets one of the new Rivian electric trucks. Which is like probably not fully a truck, a cross between like an SUV and a truck, but very trendy. You've seen the Rivians around town.
Yes.
Somebody gets one of these, they take it home, they park it, and they end up getting fines from the HOA for parking a truck in the driveway. And that particular one, they had smaller garages. He could not fit it in the garage. He had to go all the way to court to sue the HOA to get the fines reversed and to be able to park this vehicle at his property. So you look at situations like that, and some of the advice that they give when you talk to people that are in these situations is one of the big things that you can take away from this is that if there's something that doesn't make sense to you, be involved.
Yeah.
Be involved in the HOA. Go talk to the board. Figure out what the rules are. How did the rules and bylaws get passed? And then if there's something you don't like, change it. I was actually recently really, really impressed. I was visiting a friend, and this was a college student, and he was in a townhome development.
Okay.
And he had rented a townhouse in there. And he noticed every single time parking in this townhome community, and that's always an issue with tight spaces in townhomes, is that he noticed that there was 10 visitor spots.
Okay.
10 visitor spots, and there was like 2 resident spots. What happens if you park? They had a very, shall we say, active, retired HOA president that was watching this. If you park in one of the visitor spots, then you're going to get an HOA fine. So what he did, and I was really impressed by somebody that was actually a tenant in this property. He noticed over the course of 1 month that in those 8 spots for, it was 8 or 10 spots for visitors, he noticed that over the course of 1 month, he saw 2 cars parked. And so his thought was, funny that it takes a college student to figure this out. His thought was, do you think instead of 2 resident spots and 10 visitor spots, maybe we should have 2 visitor spots and 10 resident spots?
Yeah.
So like they could actually park there. And he actually went to one of the HOA meetings, brought it up to the board, and they're like, well, we're going to have so many people sign this to change the rules and bylaws. They gave him the exact numbers. He went around, door knocked, talked to all the neighbors. Every single one of them was in agreement that they thought it was ridiculous. No one was ever parking in the spots, and he got it changed and got the rule changed. So I thought that was a great example of like being involved, being willing to use some common sense. Like he had real data here. He's like, no one's ever parking in those spots. I could use that spot every single day, you know, and be able to change the rules. So I would say I would encourage people to get involved so that there's some common sense in those areas if that is somewhere where you're going to be living and it directly affects you. Because I got to tell you, there are times when we've seen and we've illustrated today by some of these stories, there are times when common sense must go out the door, or the thinking gets so directed one way without an outside perspective that it just doesn't make any sense. Like forcing people, how we started the show today, forcing people to have their garage doors open during the day while you're at work. Like you would think this just wasn't even a true thing. So that was the other big advice, was know what the rules and bylaws are. Request copies of those, because what happens when you're buying a house, I tell people a lot of times, you go under contract, there's a lot of paperwork. You have a 25-page contract that you signed with your agent. You get a title report to tell you who the real owners are. There's another 25 pages. And then you get in that title report CC&Rs that explain what the parking is, how long guests can stay at your house, what colors you could paint. All of that's going to be in there. And I definitely encourage people to know what those are before you make your final decision to move into that neighborhood. If that's something you're looking for, can you deal with that? Because it can become, it's a much bigger deal afterwards to try to change it. It's going to take some work. And so know what those CC&Rs say, and then make sure that your HOA is following the terms of those when you have an issue with that. If you have any questions about any of that, I didn't even get to there's like 3 more crazy stories that we ran out of time for, and there's probably like 100 more. But if you have any questions about any of the stuff we talked about, go to kenmoreteam.com, shoot us a message. We would love to be a resource for you, help you out, and we will be right back here next week.